And our guest reviewers are Malcolm Muggeridge and Mervyn Stockwood, the Bishop of Southwark. I'd like to ask you, Bishop, first, what was your review of the film?
Well, first of all, I was very glad to think that you simply can't get rid of Jesus in Europe today. Ceausescu of Romania, who I think thought like most communists that they're going to get rid of religion very quickly, find that it's, as he said, it's going to hang around with us for quite a long time. And certainly, when you think of what the greatest attractions on the stage, both films and acting, ever since Jesus Christ Superstar, that's what's drawn the crowds. I mean, Jesus is a most disturbing influence. You simply can't get away from him. You may worship him, respect him, commit your life to him, or just ridicule him and lampoon him, but you simply can't get rid of him. And this is what I think is a very, very interesting fact. Even in China, in their changeover now, they thought Chairman Mao's thoughts had replaced the thoughts of Jesus, but poor old Mao and the Gang of Four now really they're on the dog heap, and Jesus is being allowed back. So that, first of all, is something which I find extremely interesting. Now, the second thing well, here's a question I would ask. What are you really trying to say in this film? I believe you were on this a wee bit earlier, but unfortunately we only got the picture outside, not the voice, which was something that husbands might want for their wives. But so we didn't quite hear your defence of it. But what are you really trying to say? Now, I wasn't the least bit horrified. And people say, oh, no, Bishop, when you go there, you'll be absolutely horrified. I wasn't at all. After all, I wasn't vicar of the university church for nothing. I'm familiar with undergraduate humour. And I was also a governor of a mentally deficient school. And once I was a prep school master, and I felt frightfully at home. I thought I was just sort of back on the old familiar ground this evening. But I really wondered, what you were trying to say. I do hope you don't think I'm being unkind, because I know some of you, and I am very fond of you and have respect for you. But I say this quite frankly, I simply don't think it was worthy of you. It was the sort of thing, as I say, that at Cambridge the footlights did on a damp Tuesday afternoon, or the lower fourth when I was a schoolmaster. But I just don't know what you were saying. Then the third thing, and this I get rather more seriously, why lampoon death? I think this is the thing that really is, sort of worried me. I don't think one would make a farce about Auschwitz or of death. And whatever we think about Jesus, we may think he was the Son of God, we may think he was a mistaken fanatic, but it was a pretty shattering thing what happened, the crucifixion. And as I looked at that, and I thought of now the way people react to the cross, and after all, I'm not ashamed to wear the cross here, which is the sign of a bishop. When I look at that figure, I know you're going to say Brian isn't Jesus, but that's just rubbish. The whole thing is quite clearly, if no Jesus had lived, that film wouldn't have been produced.
But did you feel that the film actually ridiculed Jesus?
Yes, I did.
Even though it wasn't about him and...
Well, I'm afraid, you see, I can't take it wasn't about him. I put that as a matter of honesty. If Jesus of Nazareth had never existed, there'd never been a Jesus, then this film of Brian would never have been produced. I'm sure that's his so. But if I might just say, and then do come and cross-examine me then, but my mind is just sort of working on that last scene, sort of the reaction. There it seemed sort of tremendous sort of joke, and people were laughing. And then you think of the reaction of a person like Mother Teresa to that scene, what it meant for her. Now, she's saying, I'm not. But every day of the week I either say Mass or I'm present at Mass. I was this morning in the early hours, and I broke the bread. This is my body. And I took the cup. This is my blood. And I didn't roar around with laughter at the altar in my chapel this morning. I just fell down, genuflected, and worshipped, said my Lord and my God. Now, I don't think really that you come and get at me now.
Well,
I'm not criticising any of you personally.
Well, I hasten to say that I had absolutely nothing to do with the film whatsoever. But before I ask John and Michael to perhaps answer one or two of those points, could I bring in Malcolm and ask you what your review, if review is the right word?
Certainly, yes. Remember that I was engaged for 4 years in the appalling task of trying to make English people laugh as editor of Punch. It's an almost impossible thing to do. But I couldn't help feeling enormous envy of the ease with which this particular film aroused laughter. You simply had to use a 4-letter word or display a man's private parts in the window, and the whole place fell on the ground with laughter. So that I, professionally felt rather put out by that. Also, of course, I agree entirely with the bishop that it is quite humbug to say that this is not a ridiculing of the founder of the Christian religion and of the Incarnation in an extremely cheap and tenth-rate way. Remember that that story of the Incarnation was what our whole civilization began with. Remember that it has inspired every great artist, every great writer, every great composer, every great builder, every great architect, that to celebrate
30
that
years
marvelous thing.
Germany,
the
Inquisition and so forth, it's sort of...
Yes, the Inquisition was there. But nothing can alter the fact that if you were to make a list of all the greatest works of art in all fields and all the greatest contributors to those works of art, you would find that this scene of the Incarnation, the story of the Incarnation, has played the largest part. Now, in our 20th century, this film produces a sort of graffiti version of it. And I don't think, in the eyes of posterity, it will have a very distinguished place. The bishop mentioned Mother Teresa, and I was thinking of her too, because to her, you see, and it's something that the makers of this program maybe didn't even think of, but the person of Jesus Christ, not as a historical figure, not as someone in the past, but someone living in the world now, has been the essence of her existence. I once asked her what was the difference between what she did and what social workers do. And she said, well, the point is that social workers are very estimable people, but they do something, they serve their fellows for an idea. I serve my fellows for a person. And if that person wasn't there, or if that person was in some way discredited, then my work is over. And there are many people in the world, despite the fact that the media would suggest the contrary, to whom still this living presence of Jesus Christ in the world is the most essential part of their existence. And you produce it in a film as a derisory and absurd figure. And of course, to someone who has that feeling, as Mother Teresa has, or someone like Catherine Bramwell Booth has, they are deeply hurt and insulted. That doesn't in itself matter. I'd like to put another point to two that occurred to me when I was watching it, which
Malcolm, I'm awfully sorry to interrupt, but is it possible for John perhaps to answer one or two of those
Certainly,
points?
certainly.
Otherwise we're going to have
Certainly.
9 points unanswered. But
Yes, it's building up the list a bit. But I mean, the problem that we... No, seriously, the problem that we have got is that you think that we're ridiculing Jesus. And we say, sort of sincerely and truthfully, that is certainly not what we intended to do, and I believe that we're not. And I can best answer that, I think, by answering Alvid's question, which is that what were we trying to do? And I think it comes out, it was spelled out perhaps rather too plainly, rather too banally at one point, when he says, make up your own mind, don't let other people tell you. And we would absolutely deny, at least I would, that there was any attempt to say you should not believe in Christ. What we're saying is take a critical view, find out about it. Don't just believe because somebody tells you to. Somebody in the pulpit says something. Question it. Work it out yourself.
You're seriously suggesting that if someone saw that film, say a young kid who knew nothing about the Gospels or about history, that the figure of Christ that would emerge from it, this story of the Incarnation, would be a noble one, would be...
He would have to
Yes.
sort it out for himself.
And you feel-
he would have to, for example, work out, I mean, does one accept every word in the Bible? In the Sermon on the Mount, did they get it all right when Mark wrote it down 30 years later? I mean, was every word right?
But is the film likely to be seen by anybody who doesn't know an awful lot about Jesus Christ?
Most certain it is
This,
today. If you have it for children of 14 today, you will find that the many, many children of 14 today, thanks to the secular nature of the education they're receiving, know nothing about it at all. And they would see this figure
I think-
in the light in which he appears in this film, you see. It's no good you cheating yourselves. You can't have it both ways. You produce this particular film which arouses bursts of laughter, as I said earlier, rather easily procured. But don't imagine that someone seeing that is going to go away with the concept of the founder of the Christian religion and all that that meant to mankind in any way corresponding to what history or the Gospels or anything else is presented.
Well, it's
In any way corresponding to what history or the Gospels or anything else is presented.
Well, it's not supposed to be about him, so people shouldn't go
But
and
it's
see
no
it
good
to learn
saying
about
that
it.
it's not about
I'm
him. You know
not
perfectly
being
well.
dishonest. I mean, I
You're being
believe
utterly
Can I
dishonest, my
just
dear
say,
chap.
yeah, I mean, I don't know where this will get us, but I feel my approach to the film was I was confused. I feel I'm still asking questions, seeking solutions. I am very confused and perturbed by a religion, an established religion in this country, where people can go into church on a Sunday morning. The same people can sing hymns and say prayers. And at the same time, these people can stand by while their money is spent making bombs, making guns, building up appalling weapons of destruction, can sit by, sing hymns, say their prayers, and agree with a policy in which hospitals have to go without money.
First of all, I'd very much like to know where you get your evidence. You must give me chapter and verse. So it happens that immediately before coming here, I was asked by crowds of church people if I would stand up for the councils of the health of St. Olive's Hospital, which the government is trying to close. The church is extremely active in these fields, and I would urge you not to make these careless generalizations which are not dependent on evidence. Now,
I make them in all humility. I'm seeking answers and solutions. I'm not saying this is absolutely the way it is, but I have observed
I'm
people...
saying I mean, what you were saying, if I may say, it was great, but it's sheer rubbish. And you made a ridiculous generalization which is unworthy of an educated man. Now, having said this, back to what you say, somebody aged 14 coming and seeing this thing of Jesus, what you are seeing is not one of the greatest teachers in the world. I mean, granted, lots of people, the majority of people wouldn't accept him as the Son of God as I do, but surely most of us would see him as one of the greatest teachers of the world. Now, you wouldn't guy Socrates or make him appear as a clown. And what I think
Maybe
this
there are funny
film...
things about him.
What?
Maybe there are funny things about Socrates. Why shouldn't we make jokes about
Well,
Socrates?
if there are certain aspects of the work, but you would not Socrates.
No, that's not my point. I don't know enough
Socrates
about
also
Socrates.
was
Maybe he was
murdered.
funny.
He was made to drink poison. You wouldn't guy him at that point or make him appear as a clown. And what I say, and I'm afraid you won't alter my conviction, John, over this, is that this most, what is to a Christian, the most sacred moment of the whole Jesus experience, namely his death, that at that most sacred moment he was guyed and made to look as a clown.
May I make another point just here, which is rather interesting, that if you'd made that film about Muhammad, you see, there would have been an absolute hullabaloo in this country, because all the sort of the racial, anti-racialist people would have risen up in their might. The same people who would approve of this and would have said this is quite disgraceful. And behind people's minds would be the thought of maybe they might lose a bit of oil, you know, by doing it. But you see the difference.
You're right, Malcolm. I mean, 400 years ago, we would have been burnt for this film. Now, I'm suggesting that we've made an advance.
Well, I'm suggesting that compared with other presentations of this great event, the Incarnation, you have not made an advance, and that anybody in the future who might dredge up this miserable little film, and it's quite possible they might as a piece of social history, they would certainly not wish to relate it to the thing, say, Chartres Cathedral, which is built to the glory of Christ.
Not a funny building, actually.
But they might want to compare it with Fawlty Towers.
Yes, they're not even intended to be a funny building.
Well, it has the gargoyles on it, you know.
Michael.
I think that, and I've seen this in the sort of reviews of the film, they concentrate always on the religious angle. Even, you know, before they've seen it, they've decided this is a film about religion. I don't think it is entirely. I think that what we've chosen to do is what we've always done in Python. We've done for 3 series and done for 3 films. We have taken a certain group of people, which are generally sort of England in the present day, and put them into a historical context. I think that's what we've done with this film. I think it isn't entirely about religion. It's about the people who live in, anyone who lives and makes up our society today.
It's also about closed systems of thought, whether they're political or theological or religious, whatever. Systems by which whatever evidence is given to the person, he merely adapts it, fits it into his ideology. You show the same event to a Marxist and a Catholic, for example, they both of them fine, they both have explanations of it. I mean, it's what to be pompous poppers on about with falsifiability of theories. I mean, once you've actually got an idea that is whirring round so fast that no other light or contrary evidence can come in, then I think it's very dangerous. I don't think it's dangerous to someone like Malcolm, because he's actually a very nice man. But I think he is the sort of guy that this film is actually having a go at, because I don't think that there's any evidence that can come to him now that is going to make him think, am I right? Am I making a mistake?
Well, you can leave that out. I think I could say with utter sincerity that there was nothing in this particular film that would lead me to want to change conclusions that I've reached after living for 76 years in this world.
Is there anything? That's the point I'm making.
Well, in this film, there was nothing that could possibly, because the film itself bore so little.
No, but the point I was making, Mark, is not the film. Forget the film. We'll say that's rubbish. Okay. Is there anything that can happen to you now that could cause you to change your mind?
But of course, every single person who is alive and spiritually alive is constantly reviewing his faith. I do not believe for a moment that there is a definitive faith and you say, there it is. But there's nothing in this little squalid number that could possibly affect anybody. Now, in that sense, I give you this point. I give you this point that there's nothing in this film that could possibly destroy anybody's genuine faith. That I grant you absolutely not, because it's much too 10th rate for that. But what I still contend is that someone who is young, 14 years old, seeing that without any particular background might really imagine that that buffoonery is an expression of this great episode.
Well, you see, I was also, you talked about the presentation of Christianity. I mean, I went to an English preparatory school and an English public school, Clifton College, sort of sports academy.
I sympathise with you.
I was given 8 or 10 years of a form of Christianity which I grew to despise and dislike. Largely, it insulted my intelligence. The sermons that were given at the age of 11 and 12, I felt insulted my intelligence. When I got into writing this film, and we all had exactly the same reaction, we started to discover a lot of stuff about Christianity, and I started to get angry. Because I started to think, why was I given this rubbish? this 10th-rate series of platitudes when there were interesting things to have discussed. There were factual
And
things.
you feel
Nobody
the
ever
interest-
told me.
you feel
Nobody
the-
ever told me that they don't know what language the Gospels were written in, that they don't even know who wrote them, and they're not even sure what cities they were
Well, then
written
you
in.
must have read very superficially at your school. That's all.
Look, John, it's very bad luck for you, but you see, I used to go to Clifton College to preach very often when you were there. I know the headmaster, I know the staff, I know the servants. All I can say is you must have been as idle a boy, as splendid an actor as you are.
I wasn't
because
actually,
if
I was
you,
always
if you
open.
really to take this seriously, I mean, you had some absolute first-class teachers.
Were a joke. They were a joke.
Well, only because you made them. You
No.
cannot. How do you know about? I know people who've Clifton College of exactly your own period
I
who are
remember
now
the
priests in
sermons.
my diocese.
I remember the sermons. I remember.
You don't
writing
remember mine. Tell me what I preached on.
No idea. I only remember the bad ones.
Well,
I remember a gentleman coming and telling us how very difficult it had proved to get the Bible into Tibet. You know, they'd had 7 occasions. The first time there'd been landslides, the second time there'd been rains and the pages had got stuck together. The third time, no, this is true. The third time the mules had fallen off the mountainside. The fourth time there were thunderbolts, and the 7th time he said, "God helped us." And we got the Bibles into Tibet. And the obvious conclusion was that he was trying like hell to stop them getting the Bible.
sorry, but you really are lampooning this because by O-levels and A-levels, going on the whole time, people were taking the scriptures. They'd had to have studied Greek, perhaps Hebrew, and have had made a serious study of the scriptures. You chose not to do that. I'm sure
We
you
made
had
a
far more
superficial
interesting
study.
things to
We
do.
only had 4 years to write the film. We didn't want to get too specialist because if we got too
I'm
specialist...
sorry, I'm talking about Clifton College. But still, I don't really think this has got very much to do with
Could I just ask, as I think in theory anyway, a sort of moderator, I'm supposed to be neutral.
Of the Church of Scotland or the Church of England? Moderator,
I'm supposed to be in the middle, but didn't you... I mean, I felt when I saw the film, and I saw it in a cinema in New York with a very appreciative audience, did you not feel that, in fact, the people being lampooned were the followers rather than Jesus himself? I felt that very strongly.
No, I don't think so. It was... I really felt, I mean, the crucifixions above all else, which are things I felt sad about because, I mean, I'm quite sure, as all of us will one day, and this is not trying to attack your vulnerabilities, but life is very short. All of us will be on our deathbeds in a comparatively short time. And when we are, and that'll be no laughing matter, that it is much that Christ which I should like to be held up in front of me than the Christ I saw
But the
on
film
the cross this
did
afternoon.
bring home to
suggest-
me...
sorry, yeah.
I was going to say very quickly that the film reminded me of something which I obviously knew, but one tends to forget, that it wasn't only Jesus that was crucified. I mean, an awful lot of people were crucified in the most horrific circumstances
Yes.
every day of the week under
Yes,
Roman rule.
yes, that's very
and
true.
that fact came home in the film. You realise that Jesus didn't have a sort of total copyright to crucifixion.
Yeah, but Jesus was crucified, wasn't he, for his obedience to the will of God. You
But he was
can't say... you can't
crucified surely for blasphemy.
Yes, but they accused him of blasphemy because he was obedient to the will of God and of his kingdom. You can't say that came over today, that with any of the people who were being crucified.
No, but that wasn't
they
true.
were, I mean, the whole way that it was done, they were not dying for a noble idea.
Well, neither were the...
Yeah, but I mean, I think that what... Can I just make the point I was trying to make earlier on about the film not being seen entirely in religious terms? That, I mean, as Tim has said, people were crucified then as common criminals. It was just a form of capital punishment employed by the Romans, who were regarded as a highly civilized people. But it was capital punishment. And in the film, we examine attitudes to capital punishment. As far as I know, in this country, the majority of people we are constantly told are in favour of capital punishment. It just seems that we haven't come that far in all that time.
Why do you think that through all these centuries of Christendom, that the greatest minds, the most creative minds, the greatest artists were believers in this thing that you airily dismiss and say that you, making this little film, have managed to see deeply into it
I
and to
don't,
reach
Malcolm.
I can't
conclusions.
say they
I
are.
wish
What
I
about
knew what
Freddie
their
Ayer? What about
convictions
Bertrand
were.
Russell? You dismiss them, of course. They don't count.
I said in the centuries of Christendom. I didn't say in our time. I said that if you were to make a list of all the people who have contributed most
Most
to
of them
art
would have been
and literature-
Muslims if they'd been
No.
living in the Arab countries,
They-
or Buddhists if they'd been living
But
in
what
the...
has that got to do with it? These people were inspired. These people were inspired by this event, which you have celebrated in this film by a lot of people on crosses singing a sort of, as though it's sort of rather
As though
inferior
death-
musical.
Death perhaps doesn't matter that much, which
no.
after all you're saying the whole time. You're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it
Yes.
keenly, but
So-
I'm looking
so are you
forward
sad
to
about it?
No, I'm looking forward to it keenly because I know, because I relate it to these very things that you dismiss. I relate it to the story of the Incarnation, this great drama of the Incarnation, which you have reduced to a sort of comic film. Now, you think that in doing that, you have shed light. But I have to tell you that you haven't shed light. You've made some rather bad jokes, and the only reason that people come to see it is because they still relate it to this extraordinary story of the Incarnation, which is in fact the beginning and the end of everything that our civilization stands for. Our civilization began with a man, the Apostle Paul, telling pagan world about the Incarnation. That was the
Yes, but
beginning
we're
of
not
it.
the only civilization in the world.
Not at all.
No,
I'm not
there's
saying
a lot
we
of
are.
civilizations
Certainly.
with different religions,
Certainly.
right?
I'm not-
And the important thing is that people should be open to the various
But
possibilities,
whoever
and that they should take a critical attitude
Yes, but
to them.
whoever said they shouldn't be open? But you don't make people open by producing the sort of buffoonery that
Well, you
produce
certainly
there.
don't make people open by giving them the kind of garbage I was given at school.
Well, then I'm very sympathetic to you for having received this garbage, some of it at the hands of our friend Bishop here. I'm very sympathetic indeed, and I think it's very sad and tragic that you should have been cut off from something that's so wonderful and only given garbage. But I would simply point out to you that if you care about what constitutes what we call Western civilization, which now probably is coming to an end, and you were to consider the role that's been played in that by this thing that you treat as a piece of buffoonery, you would have a certain humility in saying that you have been able, through making it, to shed light
But you
upon
keep
something.
making the basic assumption. Sorry, let me just say this,
Yeah.
Mike. You keep making the basic assumption that we are ridiculing Christ and Christ's teaching, and I say that we are not.
But do you imagine that your scene, for instance, of the Sermon on the Mount, the scene in your film of the Sermon on the Mount,
Right.
is not ridiculing one of the most sublime utterances that any human being has ever spoken on this earth? Of course it is.
No, it's
Absolutely
making fun
not.
of the guy who's remembered it wrong and of the people who don't understand it and miss the point.
Well, I think
That's really unfair because I think that a lot of people looking in will think that we have actually ridiculed Christ physically. Christ is played by an actor, Ken Colley. He speaks the words from the Sermon on the Mount. He's treated absolutely respectfully. The camera then pans away. We go right to the back of the crowd to someone who shouts, "Speak up," because they cannot hear him. Now, I mean, if that utterly, undermines one's faith in Christ, then I think the faith cannot be terribly strong.
I started off by saying that this is such a 10th-rate film that I don't believe that it would disturb
Yes, I know you started
anybody's
with an open
faith.
mind. I realise that.
I
John, can I put you a question? Now, without I hope in any way sort of being pompous, I mean, I have been Bishop of South London now for over 20 years, and I'm appalled by the sadness, the unhappiness, the tragedy of life, and the drug scene, the violence, the muggings, and so on. And many people now are standing back with a measure of deep disturbance and horror. I was at Cambridge only the Sunday before last, and I'm told how the undergraduates now are turning up in chapel and seeing if Christianity has got something to offer. I think, I mean, most of us, I'm sure we'd be all, however much we may differ on this film, that we are deeply disturbed by what's going on in the world and in this country. Now, there is a desire to find truth, to find some answer to our problems. And the question, I would put to you, could you really put your hand on your heart and say that that film is going to help the younger generation and its
Absolutely.
pilgrimage for truth?
If they think
Well,
about
John,
it, absolutely. The message is, what is it, Mike? What are the words? Work it out for yourself. You're all individuals. Don't do what people tell you to do. And that's not
You
that's
find that a sort of final...
No, starting point.
Starting point.
including the lampooning of Christ.
And the lampooning of his death, which is the most
Lampooning.
No, it was-
disgraceful
Well, I
part
think
of the
that's
whole
just
thing.
we
Surely,
disagree
Markham,
on
it was
that.
the
I can't-
lampooning of a form of death, which happened to
You're
hundreds of people.
lampooning a scene which has been played a fantastic part in the lives of believers for generations, a scene that has inspired the most amazing disinterestedness, creativity, that set St. Francis of Assisi wandering
Yes,
about the streets,
true,
that inspired St. Augustine to write the City of God.
This I accept, but I
all
think
that
the
is true, and all
crucifixion-
you've done is
Well-
to make a lot of people on a cross singing a music hall song.
A lot of
It's
people,
so disgusting
Could I
when you
just say
think
that
of it.
a lot
You
of
see?
people go away very happy, laughing at that. Their faith not touched one jot.
I don't think it'll
really
touch
do.
your faith.
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
it
it
will.
will.
And let me come back at this point. And a lot of people on the first Good Friday went away from Calvary laughing their heads off and thinking the death of Jesus was a tremendous joke.
Well, that's very true, because as a matter of fact, all you've done is for the person you followed in this film is Herod. Because it was Herod who organized this absurd scene, and I'm only amazed that you didn't get some comic effects out of the Crown of Thorns. That's the only thing that puzzles
Martin,
me in
if
the
you
film.
wanted to make a joke out of Jesus, Jesus would have appeared on the cross. He was an actor, he was there in the film. He does not appear on the
No, but
cross.
you
Nowhere
make-
at all. It's a gang of thieves, of common criminals who were at that time crucified in hundreds day by day. That's... I'm sorry, I know that you think I'm wrong, but that's what I feel.
I
It is
think
not
I
Christ.
think it's a ludicrous thing,
Can I just
because
say
I
that
tell
the-
you that
the
the
Chris-
people see
Malcolm,
This is what the film's about. You see,
Malcolm,
the
can I just say
impossibility-
that to an outsider, the crucifixion is a much stronger event if one realizes that Christ went through something that everybody went through. If you treat it like something that only he went through, which is the image you get. I never realized
Well,
I
of
was about
course it was,
16 that
but I mean,
everybody got crucified.
If he was crucified between...
I also have to say that we have to-
He was crucified between two thieves. If you're saying that the experience
Yes, but
of those three people was the same experience simply because they went through the same physical experience, then you are utterly misunderstanding what the crucifixion means, what the passion means, why it's had this enormous role in people's lives. It wouldn't have had that role if it was simply one of innumerable men dying on a cross. It's because of what it signified that in terms of the incarnation, and of course you leave that all out of account. What you've done is you've succeeded in doing, and that for that reason it will have absolutely no influence in the long run. You have succeeded in reducing something which has inspired the greatest art into something which is presented in terms of the lowest art.
If you
That's your
set-
feat. That's
you
your
set up
achievement.
your own terms that we have to influence people. We're not saying we want to influence
No, I
people. We're
don't.
trying to make them laugh, make them
Yes.
happy.
Yes.
That's something that helps.
Gentlemen,
in
I'm going to
the
have to
terrible
call a halt.
situation the
I'm
world
very
is in.
sorry. I think you've made people happy and made them think and made them laugh. And
I think we'll make them talk about
I
it.
can't.
Well, you'll get your 30 pieces. You'll get your 30 pieces of silver.
Well,
I'm quite sure.
I hasten to add that.
No, but you don't understand, my dear boy. It sells a pleasure to you. Because you're missing the most wonderful thing in life, and you're seeing it in those terms, and it's utterly tragic.
Gentlemen,
to me.
thank you very much.
Utterly tragic.
I hope that film
My
won't
heart
shake
aches.
anybody's faith. Paul Jones, to change the subject, has returned to his first love, the blues, and without in any way abandoning his acting career, for he's currently starring in a West End musical, he's spending a very good deal of his time behind a harmonica and a microphone in front of the blues band. Here they are with Boom Boom, Out Go the Lights.
No kidding, I'm ready to fight. I've been looking for my baby all night. If I get her in my sight, boom, boom, out go the lights.